All right, hello, this is Wmpyr here to talk about Bruce Lee once again. And I want to talk about a little bit about the original um, people and the concept people. Like Jeet Kune Do seems to be divided into factions, and I don't want to go into politics or anything like that because A, I don't know it, and B, I'm who cares about that kind of gossip, and I don't care about politics, but what I do want to talk about is directly how it influenced me in my training. So, back in the day, when I was training, I started at a place that the teacher mixed styles together. Okay, so my teacher was a guy that mixed styles, and he was very, very knowledgeable with various martial arts. This was my first martial arts instructor. But the main three styles that I have to think that these were his main focuses. Number one was Kuk Sul Wan. Number two was full contact fighting. And then number three was Filipino martial arts. So my instructor had mixed these three. I would say these are the main ingredients. He, like I said, he was very, very knowledgeable about many different styles. I mean, even styles that are super rare. He had at least heard about it, or he could tell you at least a sentence worth of something. Even like on the rarest styles. I mean, he's very, very knowledgeable guy. Um, but anyway, those were the three. Well, my parents took me out of martial arts and they said, no more for you. All right. So within the first 4 years, because back then I remember they were saying like to get a black belt roughly takes 4 years. Okay. This is across the board in the US at the time in the 90s. So it's going to take you 4 years to get a black belt. Okay. Well, these 4 years to me are kind of critical then, right? And I was pulled out within those 4 years. And I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to keep training? I needed some kind of textbook. And so the textbook that I went to was Bruce Lee's The Tao of Jeet Kune Do. Why? For one, Bruce Lee wasn't a big guy. So that appealed to me. And because I wasn't a big guy, so it seemed like, hey, this is a good person to model myself after. Yeah, he's a physical specimen and I wasn't. But you know what? If I worked out hard, it would be more possible for me to look closer to him than like let's say Van Damme. I just don't have the mass. So I would never look like Van Damme. Or even if I tried, it would really hurt my body to maintain that. So even though there's no way I could be in the league or even remotely close to a Bruce Lee physical, ability, it was definitely more along the lines natural for me, right? I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so that was one. And the other one was Bruce Lee was big into cross training, and so was I. I like the different styles. And like I said, my instructor did that, so it just made sense for me to do that too. And then Bruce Lee's into that, so I'm like, yeah, that sounds good to me. Let's cross train. So that's why I chose him, and I was studying his Jeet Kune Do. And at the time, I have to admit that the way that I was studying it and the way that I was practicing on my own was very, very close to what I've seen video wise, what the original people teach. The faction, the Jeet Kune Do faction of the people that call the original Jeet Kune Do people. I was doing something very similar. And I also just and I didn't even know that until later when I saw videos later on, many years after, not many years, but a few years after, I actually got my hands on videos of some of the famous original guys teaching. And I saw the video and I thought, yeah, I do this. I do this kind of thing. Yeah, you know, from my own research, I do similar stuff. So anyway, I was training like that, trying to learn Bruce Lee's techniques, and I was using them in fights, and it helped me out. That's all I could say. Now, as far as the concept people goes, so this is spearheaded by Professor Danny Inosanto. And when I looked at Professor Danny Inosanto at the time, this is my personal opinion, and I apologize for the bad, negativity. But I thought he was a disgrace to Bruce Lee. At the time, that's how I felt. I don't think that anymore. I apologize, and I also take it back, and I've changed my view. Okay, but at the time, I was ignorant. I was young. I was dumb. I thought I knew everything. And the way that I saw it was that Professor Danny Inosanto he wasn't doing what Bruce Lee wanted. What the hell is this? And I didn't care for him at all, right? And like I said, the way that I was training the Jeet Kune Do stuff was along the lines of the original. And then later on I had heard that, you go to Professor Danny Inosanto's school, what is he teaching? How does he teach this stuff? And it was divided into, I was like, what's with all this Filipino martial arts? I am a big Filipino martial arts guy, but I was like, this ain't Jeet Kune Do. And don't tell me that it is Jeet Kune Do, because what you're doing is Filipino martial arts. So I really disliked that, and I didn't understand. So what Professor Danny Inosanto was doing, my understanding now, is that Bruce Lee said to him, he said, I'm Chinese. So Kung Fu's in my blood. So I do Kung Fu. You're Filipino. You need to do Filipino martial arts. It's in your blood. But make sure that doesn't limit you. That you start doing Filipino martial arts and that's it. Make sure that doesn't happen to you. Well, from my understanding, Professor Danny Inosanto's personality is he's just a natural student. The guy is he's an amazing student, and he just learns. He's one of those guys, from my understanding. I never met the guy. But so Bruce Lee was a guy that, he could come on screen, he could go in interviews, and he could say, I'm the best. I don't think he necessarily said it like that, but he pretty much implied it, right? He's like, I am the best. I am the baddest dude on earth. He's that kind of guy. He could make that sound believable. He was charismatic, right? Professor Danny Inosanto was like, that's not me. I'm not that kind of guy. So he stayed in the shadows, even though Bruce Lee, and being Bruce Lee's number one student, that automatically gives you a ticket to Hollywood. He's his number one student. He could have easily gone into Hollywood. But I think that Professor Danny Inosanto's like, that's not me. That's not my personality. So he stayed in the shadows. And because of Bruce Lee, and he passed the torch to Professor Dan Inosanto, to this day we see Filipino martial arts in Hollywood movies and Hollywood TV shows, and it's all over. And even though a lot of people don't know about Filipino martial arts, you've all seen it. All of you have seen it at least once on the big screen. All of you. Whether it's the Bourne Identity, or it's the training scene in Arrow, or, whatever. It's there. And it's such a strong influence there because of Professor Danny Inosanto, because Bruce Lee opened that door into Hollywood. And Professor Danny Inosanto is the kind of guy that just wants to stay in the shadows. So that's why, even though everyone's seen Filipino martial arts, like even the recent Dune movies, the remakes, it's in there. But most people don't know that's what they're watching is Filipino martial arts. They have no idea. And then furthermore, where does this come from? That a lot of it is, you could probably trace it back to Professor Danny Inosanto. the guy doing the choreography probably was at one point a student from Professor Dan, or his teacher was a student of Professor Daniel Santos. So that kind of connection, right? You don't even see it because this guy prefers to be in the shadows. He's that kind of guy. He's like, no, 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 no. I don't need the credit, kind of thing. So anyway, I'm just saying. And I didn't understand that Bruce Lee had told him, hey, look, don't be my clone. I want you to evolve. And that's what Jeet Kune Do is about. So I had misunderstood. I thought Jeet Kune Do was a system. It's a system of combat. I was wrong. In an interview, Professor Daniel Santo clearly says that Jeet Kune Do is an evolution. So for Bruce Lee, what that meant was he went from Junfeng Kung Fu and then he evolved, and that was Jeet Kune Do. So Professor Daniel Santo understood that concept, and therefore he was teaching at Princeton Academy. He had a curriculum. I don't remember the exact curriculum. You could look it up, but it changes throughout time. But it was like he would teach like Junfan Kung Fu, and then he would teach like Muay Thai kickboxing. He wouldn't, but he would bring in a guy that was a Muay Thai specialist. I forgot the guy's name, but or he'd bring in a Savat guy to teach another Savat class, another guy to teach Shuto, another guy to teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So he had these different curriculums, and that's all. He spearheaded that. He was in charge of all of that, but he's the one that managed that and said, all of this is Jeet Kune Do, basically. So what that means is the student takes all these different classes, and so you're cross-training. And then it's up to you how you put it together, how you decide to use it, which one you specialize in, whatever. But you put all that experience together and it changes you. There's your evolution. So it's your own evolution. Professor Daniel Santo left that for you to do on your own. The original people were not concerned about those kinds of teachings. The original people was like, what exactly did Bruce Lee do? Okay, this is what he did. What's the actual technique he did? How did he develop that? Okay, we're going to do it exactly without changing anything. That's my understanding. I don't know how they are today, but back in the day, it was like that, and it helped me out a lot. It made sense to me. Over time, like I didn't even know, but when I was having my challenge matches in the college, I was basically doing what Professor Daniel Santo was doing, which was you have these different classes. So I was cross-training in different styles. So at the time, there was no Savat in my area. I was cross-training in Taekwondo. That was the kicking part, And then, yeah, I was trying to cross-train in some Kung Fu systems, various whatever Kung Fu I could get my hands on. So I cross-trained with people that were Kung Fu people. And then, of course, Filipino martial arts, just like Professor Dan, Santo did at the time. And then he had that in his curriculum. And then there was some kind of grappling that I needed to learn. So, I was trying to learn any kind of grappling, really. And then Professor Daniel Santo was also offering a grappling system. So I was pretty much doing exactly the same thing, just, in my own neck of the woods. And that super helped me out in the challenge matches. In fact, if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have been as successful as I was in those matches. So what I'm trying to say is that the original and the concept, they both have their merits, and to battle each other or to say which one's more true to Bruce Lee is ridiculous. Because in one point of view, the original people are following exactly what Bruce Lee was doing. But then Bruce Lee himself said, don't be my clone. What the hell is that? Right? So then the concept people, they get what he meant about, you got to evolve. So they're evolving in a way that Bruce Lee said to evolve. So, in that sense, they're doing it exactly what Bruce Lee said. So they're following Bruce Lee's teachings. So So you know what I mean? It's both are necessary in my opinion, and I think both are well, both definitely help me out for sure, without a doubt. Now, as far as the politics and the different organizations and all the gossiping, I could care less about. Never was part of that. Thank goodness that's not my personality. And yeah, um, you know, because just because uh, there's a Jeet Kune Do instructor, I mean, doesn't mean that they're going to be a good instructor. He could be a terrible, terrible instructor, and I've seen them. I've seen them on YouTube. I've seen some of these instructors that are absolutely horrific. I'm watching them going, wow, this guy's pretty much a con artist. So unfortunate, but that exists in every style. That exists, in every venue. So when you go learn, if you go, you know what, I like Jeet Kune Do, I want to go learn it. Well, just be careful. Just because you know what Bruce Lee stood for, but that doesn't mean that the organization that you go to or the person that you're going to learn from is following that. That's a case by case. So just be careful. But anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.